Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of I Like to Read with me, your host, Rachel Polanski. Today is a very, very special day. I am excited to be joined by Kim Baldwin. Kim Baldwin is a writer, social media strategist, and reader, pop culture devotee, and cat mom living in Nashville, Tennessee. An OG blogger, she started The Blonde Mule in 2006 and turned her popular interview series, These Are My Bitches, into the Ladyland podcast, which is how I first stumbled upon her. Hi, Kim. Welcome.
Hi. It's nice to see you in person. I mean, not in person, but on Twitter.
I've been following you on Twitter, I think, because I want to say I was one of the OG Ladyland listeners. I mean, I've been listening since season one. So the first one was with Mary Laura Philpott, right?
Yes.
A long time ago.
Yes.
We'll get into it. So I guess my first question is, since I found you when you were a podcaster, but before that, and you still are a blogger, was there a specific moment, or did you feel like it was more of a gradual shift in your storytelling format from blogging to podcasting?
It was, God, it could be both. Someone asked me to turn it into a podcast.
Oh.
So it wasn't gradual in the sense that it was something I wanted to do, and I started doing it. Someone approached me and asked if I would turn that series into a podcast and put it on their network. And I was like, I guess. So
why
not? It's my second podcast, which no one knows that.
What was the one you had before this?
Oh my God. Friday Night Nudes.
Was it like Friday Night Lights or just at the time?
Didn't work. Michael Eads here in Nashville runs the podcast network. We own this town, and he's an old personal friend. And all these guys were making podcasts in town, and he was putting them all out because he built a studio. And he was like, I need a woman. I can't just have all these guys. And he said, do you want to turn These Are My Bitches into a podcast? And I was like, sure. And instead, I ignored him, and I made just me and my best friend at the time. We just once a week talked to each other and turned it into a podcast, and it was insufferable and it was horrible. Nobody listened. It was terrible.
I mean, yeah, I feel like that's the original idea where it's like, hey, me and my friend have something in common. I mean, this itself has evolved too. Like, it used to be just like me sitting there talking about the 5 books I read every week, which is like kind of fun and people were enjoying it. But it's also like, I didn't like to script or plan anything. And it just gets a little like bored. Like, no one likes to hear someone just like talk about themselves really without like a targeted purpose. And here I'm like, okay, I can reach out to people, it's weird. You're like, how much do I share about myself? Because it is like a slightly more intimate format, but like how much of it is script? I don't know. The podcasting world is weird. But so how many years ago was that? Like 3? Has it been now 4? Because you've taken some breaks in between seasons. So
I think Friday Night Nudes was in 2017. So it was some time ago. We did 1 season of it.
Is it still out? Sorry to interrupt you. Is it still out there? Can we find it? No, it's buried.
Killed it. When I took like a year, it killed our friendship. I sadly no longer friends. It killed everything. It was horrible. And so I took like a break. And then Michael, when we ended up doing Ladyland, he just replaced it all on the back end. Gotcha. He just like changed the names out and just like, so no, it just went away. Like it never existed.
Interesting.
Which is what I wanted.
Good. I mean, we don't need to get too much into that in terms of the psychology, but I feel like it is really difficult to work with someone who you are close with. Like my boyfriend is my producer, and sometimes that even causes like a little bit of tension. I'm like, when are you editing my podcast? Because he has other like paid jobs that he's doing and I'm not paying him. And so God forbid we ever like actually work together on something. Like, I think that would just be too much. And then, especially the same thing with a friend, like long story short, I moved out to Los Angeles originally, like wanting to be a screenwriter with my best friend, quickly became like disillusioned with that. And we also she was like my everything at the time. And we like hardly ever talk now and fell apart for a variety of reasons. But isn't that interesting how like working on creative projects with people that you're close to, some people do it really successfully. And I am always like very interested in the psychology of that, but that's a whole other project. people and everything, how do you choose who you interview? And then along with how you choose who you're interviewed, if you can also talk a little bit about the shift now that you're doing videos primarily in addition to the audio podcast.
I will say, I'm going to ignore your question for a minute.
Sure. I love it.
Because the first podcast did not work. I was just going to be done. I was like, well, I did it, like, whatever. But Michael really wanted me to do the original idea.
It's
and
a good idea.
I was like, I could try the thing that you actually asked me to do. So one of my oldest friends was one of my oldest friends was a veteran TV news producer. And she had just taken some time off work and was trying to like do some different things. And so I asked if she would produce the new podcast and like produce it like a real producer.
Right.
And she was like, yes. So I put her in charge. Her name is Mary Catherine. She's listed everywhere because she is the producer of Ladyland. And so we built Ladyland from there. We just went and got coffee one day and I was like, I can't do that thing I just did that didn't work. Will you help me build the thing Michael actually wants?
That's awesome. And
so
is your friendship still intact now?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She also produced the videos. Like
Which I love. They're so high quality. They're so high quality. I mean, like me here, just like me in my bedroom, and like that's all I can do. But you really have like you have like a camera crew, and you like go on location. Like, was that? It's interesting too because a lot of people shifted from COVID like away from in-person video, and you actually shifted towards it, which I found really cool.
So the video is a whole story. Everything's a whole story. But I did just want to tie it. Like I learned from the first podcast that I killed that I have to have someone. It can't just be me and my ideas. I needed like a producer. We also have an editor. I pay an editor.
Yeah, they're really tightly edited and like tight. Like that's you never like waffle with your questions or anything, and that's good. That's cool. I wish I had the time and money to do that. I don't. So who knows? That's some weird stuff is probably on the air that I have said and could be held against me at some point in my life, but whatever.
Yeah, Mary Catherine produces it for free because we've been friends since college. So Mary Catherine and I do not get paid. Like the podcast doesn't make any money. And when I had to hire an audio engineer, I went and got some sponsors. So I was like, hey, I've got to pay for this engineer. It's this much an episode. And that's what I did. But the podcast doesn't make any money. I don't have any money.
It's your passion project. I mean,
yeah,
I think it's really very few people are successful only because of their podcast.
Yeah, nobody's making money unless you're on like Crooked Media. Nobody's making money,
right? Or like, I mean, maybe I was like Wondery Media. Like, I think they're doing pretty well, like the big ones. But yeah, like, I mean, there's so many different podcasting networks, though. It's great. I mean, it's crazy and cool. And again, a whole other world.
Do you want me to answer your?
Yes.
question?
Let's go back to the actual question. Why not?
Okay. I no longer remember what you asked me. Was it how do we?
I think it was how you choose who to interview, and then going along with that too, like the shift in format, like how that came about from audio to video.
When we first started Ladyland, because I have a marketing background, I was like, I am going to pick the 6 people with the hugest Instagram accounts that I know will do this podcast. And that's how I'm going to do this. I mean, obviously I liked the people and I knew that they would be interesting and good guests, but it was brand new and I'd already done one that was a disaster. So I felt like I had burned some trust and I needed to rebuild
that's kind of smart. Yeah, that's strategic.
Like I'm serious this time.
Were you friends with all of them too? Or you were already friends with all of them too? So you had that thought. It's not like you were like cold calling people too. So you had that foundation. Yeah.
No. And they had all been in the interview series on my blog. So they had all already done the blog version of it.
So it's kind of a nice transition for the first season.
I mean, Yeah, I mean, there's no need to sugarcoat it. It was true, just like strategic. Like,
No, that's totally own your stuff. That's totally fine. Yeah.
Yeah, like who should be number one so
Yeah.
that they will blast it out and we'll pick up like.
I think that's probably how I found it, because I already followed Mary Laura because I read her first book, and then I was like, who's this cool chick? And and I kept following it.
Yeah, it's no coincidence that she was also our first video.
Right. And she already had a bit of a following. And then she was your first video too. Mm-hmm. And was that a coincidence? Right around when her book came out too. Interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. Both were around books. The first podcast episode was when her first book came out.
Oh, that's
and the video.
I didn't even realize that timing, because again, I read so many books that it's like hard to keep track. And time is also just amorphous. That's so great. So they both were, because I know the second one was definitely around Bomb Shelter, but
so it was the first one. But that's how we picked. And then we've done 3 seasons of the podcast. I'm supposed to be recording 4 right now, but I have not started yet.
You got time.
And then we just did these 3 videos.
Okay. So only those 3 are going to be videos.
Gotcha. For now. The idea was for it to be a package of 5 videos, but we have only done 3. Okay. We lost our cameraman.
It happened, and that's also the downside with working in production, working with videos. You have to rely on a lot more people and a lot more moving parts.
Well, and again, no one was getting paid.
Right.
He was doing it as a favor. And he was like, he's like, he's like, I can do 5. So he was the camera videographer and the editor. He was doing a very big job. He's like, I'll do 5 of these. I've got time. And then he got picked up by someone. He was like, okay, JK, I can't do anymore. So
So is the 4th season going to be more audio then? Or
we're going back to audio.
Those are kind of like special little vignettes or something. And they were really diverse, cool people too.
Thank you. The other 2 people that no one will ever know about were also really I picked the 5 for a reason, and it was going to be they were meant to be a group.
Right.
So I hate that it ended up not being the whole group that was chosen, because as a collective, it made more sense. And there's 2 that no one knows about. And it, but are
they going to be on the audio, or are they just kind of?
One already has been.
Okay, cool.
One was also a repeat. The videos were just an extra. Someone came to me and wanted to do it.
Oh, okay.
And
cool. So it wasn't like your idea initially. It was sort of
it wasn't even my idea.
Interesting.
A friend of mine used to make commercials for a restaurant. She left her job and was just also going to like figure some stuff out. And she thought it would be neat to make videos of women in restaurants, like women chefs and whatnot. And I think she went pretty far down the road. And then she came back to me and she said, what if we do this together and you pick the people, we'll put it under the Ladyland branding and I'll drive it. And I was like, that's a good idea. But then she brought the cameraman, both she and the cameraman got swallowed up by something that could pay them money, and they had to dip out.
Yeah, that's the downside of the passion projects, and the actually, not that people who would work for free are always unskilled, but the very talented people whose time
they were very skilled.
Yeah, they're the people whose time is like actually valuable money. Whereas for me, I'm like, I can spend an hour like online shopping, scrolling, and that's nothing. And for other people, that time is like very valuable money.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, that's interesting though. So both the podcast and the videos kind of were like, because of the people you surround yourself with in your network, sort of not like handed to you, but because of the work you already put in, it was being recognized, which is really cool.
Thanks. Yeah. I hadn't really thought about that, but yes.
No, it's cool. I mean, I think that it's hard to like give you, especially, I mean, I'm an independent small podcast as well. And it's hard to like give yourself credit for the fact that you're actually putting yourself out there, and that you're taking, yours is even better, arguably like, a little more better produced, and, a little more like mainstream per se. And it's just like really cool to see that that's, just a person too, it's a passion project. And it's not, some of the more scripted, like true crime podcasts I listen to, while they're interesting, it's like, I don't even really think think of it as true crime. It's almost like, I don't know if I do think of it as true crime, but more like a audiobook or something. Like sometimes it doesn't even feel like that I'm getting to know the person. Like I really enjoyed the true crime, like journalism podcast where you actually get to know the person behind the research. Speaking of interviewing and journalism and research, how much do you plan in advance for your interviews? I mean, obviously you select the people, but like, how much do you sort of like write down your questions in advance? How much do you sort of like plan your structure? Or is it all just sort of like improv off the cuff?
No, I break myself planning for these to the point where every season I think I'm done. I'm like, that was too hard. I'm not doing
Wow. So you like really put a lot of time into it.
Mm-hmm. Just like a dysfunctional amount. It's not normal. And that's not a humble brag. That's just like a sign of
no, that's, I mean, hey, it's all good. Sometimes we go above and beyond on things and
it's two. It could be less. So
it's
I will, I pick the people.
Right.
So once I know who it's going to be, like it's usually 6 people. And they're scheduled and there's so much logistics. I make it sound like that's nothing. That is like 3 months.
No, it really, especially like just getting one person. Like I have found it's easier almost to do it in batches because there's so much back and forth. It's like hard to keep track. And then you can also suggest dates to one person and they'll, you suggest like a block of dates and then everyone wants like the same time. You're like, how did that happen? It's hard. Yeah. It's a lot harder than people give credit for.
It is. If you've ever been any kind of like administrative assistant, you know what this is. But if you've never done that job, you have no idea. The logistics of a podcast, no one understands. It's so much. And we record in person at a studio. So
right. I was going to say you have like an actual like scheduling have to go in person component to it. Do you rent out that studio or like is it part of the network that you're a part of? That's cool. So that's a nice bonus.
Part of the network. So the research. So once we've picked the people and that's all done. When it's time to record, I will spend a week.
Wow.
And I will, and again, I already know them.
Right.
But I will read whatever is recent. Like if they're a writer, if something's recent or something's coming out, I'm trying to think of other examples. I'll just make sure I know everything they have recently done.
That's good.
So that like I'm not missing some big thing that is recent.
Right.
Or if they've done other podcasts or other media, I'll watch all of that to kind of see, to not just repeat what they've already been asked. So what I do is I build, what are my words? I build columns for the interview. So I'll do like, man, my notebook's right there. I can almost reach it. I will do.
You can grab it if you want to.
I know. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Okay. I truly forgot how insane these notes.
No, like, I love.
I'm not normal.
I love a little peek. No, I love a little peek into other people's insanities because, like, I have like literally like multiple lists on my phone of like TV shows I'm watching, TV shows I need to watch, like literally like scheduled by day. It's insane. So I feel you.
Okay, so I pulled up Gina. She was, I think, one of our last ones in season 3. You can't see this, so I will do a brain dump of questions for Gina.
Okay,
just like. Stream of consciousness, like, oh my God, she worked with John Prine. Wait, did she win a Grammy? Hold on. So I will do a brain dump.
Right. You got to fact check a little bit.
You can't see any of this. Then I take all of that and put it into groups.
Okay.
So for Gina, I have background. I have her work and her clients. And then I have like, she was the first woman nominated for this specific Grammy. And then I go under all of those columns and I write out all the questions in those columns.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then I write optional questions in case she's a fast talker. And we get through really fast.
Which is like such an interviewer's nightmare by the like, I'm like, I hate,
It's never happened. But yeah, that's how I do it.
Wow. Okay. I like that though. It's organized and concise and it works for you. And you can tell in the episodes that it's like a very thought out, but still natural, like, like you don't send them the questions ahead of time or anything, right? Like they just go in like knowing they're on the podcast, right?
No, I don't tell anybody anything. No one asks, but
right.
I wouldn't tell them.
Anyway. If they're open to going on the podcast, you would hope that they're already like, open to sharing in a more personal format versus like a really professional, like journalistic, like PR, can only say X and Y. So that's cool.
Yeah.
That's a lot though. I mean, it's not in a bad way. No, I sorry. I did not mean that in a bad. I didn't mean that. More just like I am so like not. It makes me be like. Sometimes I wish I did more work because sometimes like I have really good chemistry with the person and it like flows a lot more like a conversation. And I don't like I kind of look at my phone and to reference my notes, which also like I spend like an hour maybe. Like I don't even reread the person's book sometimes if I'm interviewing them, and it's been months. I just like go and look for the information because I'm also like maybe if I don't remember a plot point, I'm sorry, but like I want to talk to like the meat of the question anyways. But before we like dive into more reading and your love of reading, my final question about podcasting is how do you keep the conversation flow and get the most out of the guest while still inserting your own personality?
I'm not sure that I do.
I think, that's what I'm saying is I think you do is a pretty good balance. I mean, it's something that I kind of struggle with at times. So, I mean, I think you have a good balance.
Thanks. It's very hard. In the beginning, we recorded a lot of practice episodes.
Oh, that's smart.
Before we started doing, so I would interview my friends and we would just like, and then Michael and Mary Catherine would give me feedback. And I was not good. Like I kind of had to learn how to do this, which is preachy, but that's another thing about podcasting. No one's just good at it out of the gate.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's also like you think you're talking. I found now it's a lot easier when you have someone else because especially doing it by yourself, you're like, wow, I just talked for so long. I'm like, oh, that was only 20 minutes. But like, I don't want to keep like, no one wants to keep listening to just me talk. But if it's a back and forth conversation, it's like, I could listen. There's some true crime podcasts I listen to that are like 2.5 hours. I mean, I listen to them on like 1.25, but it's like, I'm somehow interested sometimes, but a lot of the times I'm not.
In those practice episodes we recorded, I was not there. Like you couldn't hear me like 10 minutes.
Oh yeah, the audio and the stuff, figuring all that too. I used to like, fumble. It takes a lot of getting used to. It's not just like sit here, do it.
Well, and because you can see me, you can see how visual I am as a responder.
I'm saying yes.
But I won't make noise. So we would record these practice episodes and I'm nodding vigorously and I'm like doing all this, but I'm not saying anything.
Right. So it's like,
so
okay.
You forget I'm there. We practiced a lot and I finally kind of like figured out you do just have to interrupt people.
Right. Cause you got to keep it tight too, because it's like, I really don't edit it. Cause I'm lazy. And also just like, I feel like it is nicer to be natural unless there's something like super crazy that happens. Or of course, if there's like something sensitive, we'll always like leave it out or whatnot, but that's part of my jam too. But it's like, it's hard. It's a lot harder than you think it is. Cause you do have to,
it's very hard.
You have to keep things on flow. It's your podcast. So you kind of got to like guide it, but you also don't want to miss anything or cut off the person. It's hard, especially when you don't know them. Like that's even a nicer benefit that you at least are like friendship. So you are a friendship.
Yeah.
I'm worth, it's like you at least have that foundation. We've never even met in person. At least we have the Twitter camaraderie, which I don't even have with a lot of people.
I try to laugh a lot when I'm recording, which is not like I do laugh a lot, but I have a distinct laugh and the laugh carries a lot of weight. Like
it's so musical. Your voice too. You have a really nice voice too. It's so soothing.
Oh, thanks. It is very hard to interview someone and not completely disappear from the audio. It's sometimes I'm better at it than others.
That's partly why I release video too, is because I'm also such especially when you practice not interrupting, you don't want them to think you've like disappeared or like you're not engaged. It's like, no, I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm not like here. Cause sometimes when people are in person too, you can like see the other person is like distracted or like not listening. And I hate that, but it's very interesting too, which is a whole other thing. Mm-hmm. But okay, let's go into reading since we're already like almost at the half-hour mark. We haven't even touched on that. Give me your childhood background experience with reading. And then also I'd love to know people's like experiences with libraries. And if you have any like fond childhood memories with libraries, which I'm sure you do.
Yes. I've always been a big reader. No memory of this, but apparently when I was very small, I walked around with a book and would just sit in someone's lap and just say book, book,
Oh, I love
book.
that. That's so cute.
Um, I probably was a lonely child. But I think that's probably common in like early readers.
Yes.
My grandparents, I lived really close to them, and they had like a built-in bookshelf library room.
Love that.
Dream. I mean, it was all, it was like Danielle Steele and Sidney Shelton. I think my grandpa read, who's the cowboy writer? Larry McMurray?
I'm so bad with names. That's the other embarrassing part with talking about books and authors too, is I'm like, I gotta have like Goodreads pulled up like all the time, or I just am like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, I read that. Yeah. But sort of more like mass market Pulp Fiction stuff.
Yes. Oh, did I freeze?
You froze for a sec, but now you're back. Again, the fun. Okay. Oh, now I was echoing weirdly for a sec, but I'm good. The joys of technology, the fact that we're able to connect from across the country, but there's sometimes a little bit of a finicky thing, and that happens.
Yes. So my grandparents were like, yeah, you can read any of this, but you have to read it. And I was like, oh, I'm going to read it. So
how old were you reading Danielle Steele?
Too young.
No, I mean, because I have the same experience too, where I was like probably like 10 or like 11.
I was younger. I was probably
okay,
6
wow.
or 7.
Okay, I was not that young, but I love it. I love it.
And I only know that because when I was 8, we moved to a different place and I didn't have access. So it had to be younger.
Because your parents probably wouldn't have approved it if they kind of like knew what exactly you were reading.
But I read them all. I loved them.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like parents don't question it because like, oh, she's reading something, so that's good. And it's like, hey, it's the amount of trashy young adult novels I read is far too young, and will hold a special place in my heart.
Oh yeah, I read. It's funny. I didn't hold on to Sidney Shelton or Danielle Steele, but I also read. My grandmother had all the Mary Higgins Clark.
Oh, she's great.
I carried that my whole life. I loved Mary Higgins Clark.
She's awesome. It's like predictable, but still like enough to delight and surprise you, which it's
definitely a formula.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like just formulaic enough, but like it's still, you still want to read them, whereas you're not like another one of these. I haven't read all of her books, but I've read quite a few in there. They're great.
Yeah, I don't even know if I have. I've read. I might have.
I mean, a judge. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't put it past you. You saw because you've been reading her for a long time too.
Oh yeah, yeah, I loved her.
Tell me the library. Yeah, tell me more about like the library. Like, was that a special place in your childhood? Like, how often did you go? Like, I remember I would literally like emulate the librarians and read to my stuffed animals, and like that was always beyond just like a place as a like, oh, there's classes and community activities. It's just like being surrounded by books and being able to choose and take home whatever I wanted. And I read so voraciously that I was going there like multiple times a week. Like it was more than just like, it was, it was a foundational place growing up in my childhood. So did you experience the same?
Yeah, same. I think most places I lived when I was young, I could either walk or ride my bike. Like I could easily get to it on my own and just go and unsupervised books. Like, I'm just going to walk through this section and see what I see. But it's funny, when I was little, I was reading Danielle Steele, but once I could get myself to the library, I went back to kids' books and read like the Boxcar Children.
Love the Boxcar Children. Nancy Drew, read a ton of those.
I was like, wait, there's books for kids?
Judy Blume. You're like, oh, she's talking about stuff that's like happening to me in real time, not stuff that's going to be happening to me in like 5 to 10 years.
Loved Judy Blume so much.
Great. She is so, I mean, I always like forget about her as being so foundational, but then you think about stuff like Are You There? It's Me, Margaret, or Are You There? God, It's Me, Margaret, and even like the Fudge series and like
Super Fudge.
Super like the turtle. Didn't he like kill a turtle or something, or he like tried to eat a turtle or something? I feel like there was like an iconic turtle moment that like not scarred me, but like kind of, I feel it was something about like him trying to eat the turtle or like kill it, not like on purpose, but incidental animal cruelty. Yeah, Judy Blume is great. So you went back to kids' books, and then did you feel like you were like missing out on something, or that you had outgrown them, or you were like, oh, finally, this is like where I belong?
Yeah, I loved them. I love to read about kids my age. I was like, wait, there's books with 8-year-olds.
Right. Oh, not just like 40-year-old women having steamy love affairs with. That's so funny.
Like, I truly did not know.
That is so. Did your parents like just not buy, like, the only books you really had access to were your grandparents' books, and that's what you enjoyed, and so you didn't want to like venture out?
I definitely did like the book fair stuff. I think I had my own books.
Right. Because you probably would have also, like, the majority were coming from your grandparents, but I'm imagining you encountered other experiences to purchase or borrow books, and you were probably not gravitating towards Danielle Steele when presented with other options or no options for Danielle Steele, because 8-year-olds, probably shouldn't. That's interesting, because I probably wouldn't care if, like, whenever I have a child, like, if they were reading Danielle Steele, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't like censor it in the way that they were watching a TV show either, because I'm like, I learned so much by reading about inappropriate stuff at a very young age, and I felt like it made me a more mature person. And so I think they're, as long as they're reading too. Do you feel like your love of reading changed or shifted throughout like school and college when you had certain like required reading parameters?
Man, it really didn't.
That's what I like to hear.
I also always took classes in college where you had to read. Like, I took a bunch of I can't remember the names of anything anymore, but
like English and writing and that kind of, humanities stuff. Yeah.
Yes. But like ones you could pick with the topic you were interested in.
Right. Because that's something else that I hate, is just like being forced to read things that you don't want to read. I think that like ruins a lot of people's love of reading. And I've like gone on many diatribes about just like literacy advocacy, in the sense that like choice is such a big part, especially when kids are younger, because there are different, not only are there so many more contemporary books that I think are great to add to our contemporary issues. The classics are a classic for a reason, but like it was hard enough to relate to them. However long I was in high school, I don't even remember, like over 10 years ago now at this point. No, 10 years ago. I'm still a little young. I'm young in that field. But I feel old sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, it's been 10 years since I graduated high school. But I just, I wouldn't read the books that I didn't want to read, but I still embraced like free time when you could have free reading, or I would always like want to finish tests quickly to read, because that was like my big opportunity. Like, I don't know. I just think that the ability to choose is so important for kids today. And I think that that's great that you were able to experience that in college. How do you keep reading how do you keep reading as an art, like a part of your everyday life, especially when I feel like the reader and the adult reader for pleasure is becoming less and less common?
It really is. Who have I seen this week? Who knows? Someone I've seen
it's like,
the
what day is it?
days was talking about this, and they were saying that they'd read like 15-ish minutes every night before they go to bed. And I was like, oh, I do too. I was like, but I also
and we had an extra few hours on top of that.
I was like, also read for like 2 hours in the morning, and sometimes
if I have like 10 minutes in between meetings, or like if I have like a couple hours when I'm like, any window of time I have that I'm not like doing something, I'm reading. Back when I used to sorry. Oh, I don't know. Talking all over you. See, I'm talking over you. No. I'm interrupted. You go ahead, please.
I worked in a bookstore here before the pandemic. I worked there for a year, and obviously part of that job is reading, because you have to do staff recs.
Right.
And we got a ton of galleys and advanced reading copies. And so we would read months in advance to load up, the website.
So you would know the good things coming out. Yeah.
And that actually kind of helped a lot, because I love schedules and I love like a system. I love to build a system.
Yeah, yeah.
And you'd have to, not everyone did, but me and a couple of the other booksellers made personal spreadsheets of like, okay, the staff recs are due at this time. I know that book is coming out, and that's the one you have to fight to get them. So
right.
I was like, okay, I got it. I'm going to read it this month anyway. But I mean, I was paid to read.
I mean, that's the dream.
So I got And it was fun. Like I was reading what I wanted to read.
Right.
And you're reading huge books that people don't even know are coming out yet.
Right. I mean, or like you don't even know what the cover looks like yet or something. It's crazy.
Yeah. So I read a ton then, and you'd have to like build it into the day because we had to read so much.
Right.
To do the job. And I've kind of just
a literal
dream.
Up. Like I've always said, I just want to get paid to read and talk about books all day. And like maybe in a perfect world, I would own a bookstore. Like that would be great. But I also like want to make money. So I live in Los Angeles.
You'll make no money.
It's expensive. So it's hard. But
yeah.
Is the bookstore that you worked at the one with the woman, I forget, I'm blanking on her name, that you interviewed, the book buyer that you did the video on?
Yes, Parnassus Books.
Yeah, so that's the one. Okay, very cool. She had such a cool story too.
Yeah, her book. I don't have it yet.
Yeah, I put it on my to be read. I put it on my to be read list once I watched the video.
Yeah, they're about to have the PDF of her galley. Ooh. And she was like, do you want one? I was like, yes, I do.
Yes, of course. That's the other thing. It's like, I'm almost like overwhelmed now that I've entered this podcasting space. Now I'm getting advanced reader copies and galleys. And like, I already have so many library books. Like I loved the Lost Public Library, like the Kindle books, because I read almost everything on my Kindle because I have no space for the actual books. And that has been a huge boon, but I have like 15 books checked out at a time. And then you have the time constraint. And I'm someone who also likes a schedule. So I'm also like, well, I know this is what I have to read. Whereas I have like, now I'm just accumulating piles of ARCs and PDFs. And I'm like, it was already hard enough, but now that I'm just like being given these things and like, not all, they don't really expect me to review them all. They just like give them to me. And I'm like,
yeah,
I'm just drowning. And I feel like books more than any other media. Of course, there's new movies and TV shows coming out every week, but like the amount of books, and also like, you'll probably feel the same way. But like when I recommend, I also love like checking the library site is like one of my favorite things. I love checking Instagram too, but like, how are my holds doing? How are my loans doing? How many days do I have left? How are my recommendations? Which I feel is basically, they're buying books for me. And then every week, oftentimes if I'm like the first one to recommend it, I get that book. So I'm literally getting like a brand new book and I'm still supporting the author. I'm not like pirating it or anything. And I feel like just reading it in general is a way of supporting them. But I'm like, that's a joy that very, very few people feel. And my connection like to the library and to like, I love books too, but the world it's created, because I'm such like kind of like an OCD person that I'm like, I need to have the compulsion of like checking. And when I get that email, that's like, your library book is now available. All that being said though, I think, it just makes it's like too much choice is a good thing, but is it like, it's also like, I wish I just found out that you can push back your hold, so you don't have to borrow it right away. You can still like keep your hold on it, but like
I didn't know that.
Deliver it in a week or two. And I just had to literally, because I think my limit is like 30 books to borrow, but the maximum you can borrow them is 21 days. So even if I average one book a day, which is about what I do for like a 200 to 300 page book, if it's a little longer, it'll take me like 2 or 3 days. And I'm just like, I don't want, then it's going to say it's expiring. And now I'm just going off on a rant. Needless to say, the Los Angeles Public Library, if you're ever listening to this and want to sponsor the podcast or Goodreads, we don't have any sponsors, but I use both of those sites so many, many, many times, and they're very near and dear to my heart, especially the Los Angeles Public Library. Anyways, all that being said, do you have a history with writing? Like, do you like writing, or do you see yourself as much more of a reader? Do you dabble for fun? What's your literary background with the pen?
I think I've always wanted to be a writer, which is maybe that's common with people that read a lot. I don't know. Most people I know write and would like to write more, and they're huge readers. When I was little, I have a life of little stories that
I love that.
I would write these crazy little stories when I was in school. And I've written probably as soon as someone taught me how to write, I think I started writing little stories. It's interesting, when I was little, of course, they're fiction. It's like,
right. Your imagination.
Personal essay when I'm 7 years old.
That'd be my journey. I would love. Yeah. Here is Long my division. Mom. Yeah.
A tale from third grade.
I couldn't watch the TV show I wanted today. Oh no.
Right. Like what am I doing? But as I've gotten out of second grade, I write personal essay now, or creative nonfiction. And I mean, on one hand, the blog is writing.
Right. I mean, yeah, sorry. I should have said beyond just like your work writing, more like creative, personal writing. You know what I mean? Yeah.
But that's like, I think the blog is where a lot of us like started building the muscle, especially like I started my blog in 2006 when everyone did. So that was what we were all doing.
Right.
That was like our work.
Live journal was around then. MySpace.
Tumblr.
Yeah.
So since like 2016, 2017, I've backed off like writing for the internet. And now I write personal essays that I try to get published, which some have. And I have another one that I just sent to an editor yesterday that will come out very soon.
Oh, awesome.
But yeah, I love to write personal essays.
I'm sure. Do you like to read personal essays too? Those are some of my favorite books to read. You write like little stories, like just little anecdotes about people's life and like making the biggest thing. I mean, that's why I have like, I'm the same way too, where like, I haven't actually like formally published anything. I definitely dabble more in like creative nonfiction or like personal essay. And I have like so many ideas. I also have like a book of fiction short stories that I'm kind of like working on, but that's a whole, I mean, like I dabbled in prose and poetry for a while and then recently just got back into writing poems. So I'm kind of like all over the place. And like, I took a class through Catapult on creative nonfiction writing, which was really awesome. And that definitely like helped me, especially like shift away from the more like academic, analytical film theory perspective, which is what I went to college and studied, and also psychology. So I was very much of like the more analytical. I love creative writing, but it was hard to sort of, and again, same thing with podcasting. It's like how much of my personal voice do I want to share? And people actually find that more interesting a lot of the time. But I'm like, I love sharing, but I'm like, do people care about this? And I'm like, well, I listen to I don't know if you know who Trisha Paytas is, like the internet.
No, I don't.
She's not an author, but she's like the complete opposite end of the pop culture spectrum, but she's like an internet YouTube celebrity who's been doing YouTube videos for like 20 years and just,
oh my God, I don't know.
Online, fascinating woman. Like I will watch, now she's pregnant and finally has like a husband and like a stable life, but she's been through quite a lot. And she just like can put up a video of her like eating food for an hour. And I'm like, I mean, I'm not like fully paying attention. I'm probably like, that's like my good, like reading background stuff, but I'm like, this is fascinating to me. And I'm like, if she wrote a book, maybe it wouldn't be that good, but at least like people have these stories. She probably, actually, no, that's a lie. She's written quite a few books, she said, but they're all like self-published. And I don't think that she's very literary, but that's a whole internet rabbit hole of Trisha Paytas. She's definitely fascinating.
Okay. I have no idea who that is. I will look her up.
A lot of people don't, but yet I think she's definitely like, she's got big on TikTok too. She's been around since then, but TikTok is like something that I even like, I barely use and know how to deal with. But yeah, Trisha Paytas, just look her. She's fascinating. Okay. And if you could have any sort of podcast with unlimited budget and resources, like for research and all that, what kind of podcast would you create? Besides, obviously, we know that you would enhance Ladyland and make it even better than it already is. But if that was already taken care of, what would sort of be like a dream podcast that you would do?
I've been thinking about this a lot. I'm still interested in the genesis of Ladyland, like talking to people about what they are interested in and or good at. But I've been thinking lately about disconnecting it from a job and just it being topic based.
Okay.
So like I would love to talk to someone about pop culture, or I would love to talk to someone about, oh my God, my brain just went completely blank.
Cats. I don't know.
Cats. Yeah. Like, why is it important to trap and release your community cats?
Right. And like, here's the woes and joys of traveling with a cat on an airplane on cross-country flights and that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
You weave in the personal with the more like nonfiction sociocultural stuff.
I mean, it's of course like a tiny bit passive aggressive because all of the things I'm thinking of are things I'm noticing people are getting wrong.
Right.
And I'm like, what if?
No, that's a good idea. No.
Instead of me getting mad in my Instagram stories,
right?
What if I remove myself a tiny bit and bring in like an expert? Maybe Maybe that is a
But
way.
yeah, someone to give voice to the words that perhaps like you don't think you have the legitimacy to say, but because you're giving them to your audience, you're saying it indirectly.
It's not even that. I have a lot of legitimacy. It's just
not to, no, sorry, I didn't say that you're not.
Oh no,
I know, you know what I mean. Like,
I know what you mean.
The legitimacy of like, okay, well, if you were to speak about, for politics, for example, I would trust you. But if you had like a senator on or something, then I would, okay,
exactly right.
That kind of vibe. I totally. Or if you're talking about cats and you have a trap and release rescuer on, I think that's really interesting too. That's a good idea. That's cool.
So
and you could like do it on the road too.
That.
Like more, I mean, dependent if you wanted to do video, but especially if it's like a more if you're talking to an expert, like seeing them at their work or, going to the senator's office or going to the trap and release rescue office and filming it there is that's like very like journalistic. I like that too, to like see.
Ooh, it is a little bit.
Like almost like a Vice. I mean, I think Vice is very hit or miss, but I think a lot of what they do is cool. And when they do on location stuff, and I think, you find the right avenue and the right people. And I think that's a cool idea.
I don't know if you listen to
the land of ladies instead of Ladyland. Sorry, I interrupted you again, of course.
Process.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I cut out again.
You cut out. Yes, my internet. Hopefully that won't show up in the recording, but who knows? Anyways, I'm sorry. You said, I don't know if you listen to, and then you cut out.
Do you listen to Still Processing, or have you?
No,
ever?
I don't.
Okay.
That's a podcast, obviously?
It is. Nice. It's a New York Times podcast by two culture writers, but they're also like very close friends. One of them took a sabbatical this year to write a book. So Wesley Morris has been doing it alone for the past couple episodes. And he's doing a little bit of what I want to do. He did like an episode on song intros.
Oh, I like that.
Or sorry, intros to TV shows that became like the Orange is the New Black theme song.
Right. Songs. Like theme songs. Yes. But the song, like the songs that already existed before. Like they weren't written just for the TV show. They were mainstream songs that were then like, now it's like, you can't listen to that song without thinking of Orange is the New Black. Gotcha.
It was great. It was just, and he had Hanif Abdurraqib on as his guest, and they talked about how it's like this lost art because now we're all streaming and we're skipping the intros and we're not even hearing the songs anymore.
Oh my God, I at least try to give it a chance for like the first couple of episodes, but naturally I'm a binger. So if I'm sitting there watching like 8 episodes, I'm like, I don't need to hear, I'm sorry. I don't need to hear it again. But some intros are really, really good that you do want to. That's the sign of like amazing intro. So it's like he takes these cool, like little wormhole topics and kind of explores them more. That's cool.
And he has like a guest come on who he knows can probably talk at length also about this thing.
Right.
And I think they're great. So somewhere in there.
Oh, cool. Well, I'll have to check that one out, and we're manifesting for you that sort of idea to come out. So if you put it out, I sound like I'm spiritual. I'm not, but like I do believe to an extent that like, if you put it out there, maybe it'll happen. Because if you just keep it to yourself, like, then you never know. I mean, you never know. So I'm like, I'm putting it out there. I want to, in some form or another, start a wrestling podcast. I am now obsessed with wrestling and WWE. My boyfriend has always been very into it. And I don't know exactly like what got us started watching it, but I do. It was last year we started watching this documentary about the Monday Night War of WWE versus its competitor network WCW in the 1990s, and how like Vince McMahon bought WCW and transformed WWE into this even bigger thing. And then we just started watching like matches and footage, and we have access to the WWE network, and it is all fascinating because it's all fake. It's all storytelling, but like the way that they still make you believe and the way that they form everything as a business. I mean, it's basically, these guys are actors, but they're also like professional athletes. Like the stuff that they do is so incredible because it's fake, but they still make you believe it. And like, you're still invested in it. And then also just like Vince McMahon as a businessman, like I have my mom's friend was actually a VP at WWE. She no longer works there. So I have her as a resource. And I'm like, maybe we should talk more offline, because I would love to sort of brainstorm with you because I have this resource, and I have like, I want to talk about wrestling, and I want to talk about sort of like its connection to reality TV and its connection also to like product development, like shows as businesses. And also there's a lot of connections with podcasting in terms of they still produce a weekly show, and how do you keep people interested and invested It's insane the amount of programming and archives that they have. So I have her as a resource. I also have another old coworker who's like, he's like 20 years older than me. And he's this like hippie Jew who loves wrestling. So I'm like, I think that could also be a fun dynamic of like me as someone coming into it without like, this is all for the listeners and the viewers, we're manifesting this. Stay tuned.
Yes.
It's niche, but it's weird, but I just need to kind of like, I'd like it to be a little more like intentioned or formal. Cause I like to read as kind of just like now it's becoming a little more curated in terms of like, I'm bringing on people who I love talking to and getting different perspectives and not just like traditional authors, like still people who can start part of the literary community. Like I said, my research is not nearly as detailed as yours, and I wouldn't want it to be scripted, but I would want it to be more like targeted. And like, there's also so much factual information to wrestling that like, I wouldn't want to get stuff wrong. So I don't know. I got to figure out like exactly what I want to do with it. Okay. Like, is it more of a conversational roundtable, sort of just like taking a topic or maybe taking a moment, like let's discuss The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania from the perspective of someone who's loved it their whole life and someone who's like new coming into it? Or is it more of like a business philosophy podcast? I don't know. So I think you perhaps now I'm just discovering that I want to use you as a resource to figure this out more, because I think that's my problem.
I already have ideas. Yeah.
I have a lot of things in my head and I keep them internally, and I just like have a hard time talking them out. And I love when other people can like figure out what I'm trying to say. Like, I know what I want, but I can't say it. And like, I love when other people can like help me articulate that. Anyways, on that note, Kim Baldwin, it was so lovely to chat with you.
We did it.
Fast. That was fast. I mean, I could keep talking to you, but like we said, we want to keep it, or I like to keep it around 50 minutes is a sweet spot. Any parting words for the readers, the listeners? I'm hoping some of your Ladyland fans will maybe check this out and get to see a new celebrity that they haven't previously seen. Any parting words before we sign off? And then I'll talk to you for a sec once we're done recording.
I wish I knew like a wrestling tagline, but I can't.
Oh my gosh. Well, you must say like, and that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so. Are you gonna be like, if you smell what the Rock is cooking? Are like, all right, brother.
Yes. All right.
Hulk Hogan, all right, brother. I don't know if you know Will Sasso, who's like a Canadian. No. He's a Canadian comedian who used to be on Mad TV. Now he has this podcast with this guy who is like a big Bachelor, like podcaster, fan, strategic person, weird but cool dude. Anyways, their podcast is run by an AI. It's called Dudesy. It's very interesting because the AI like plans segments for them. Anyways, he loves wrestling and does wrestling impressions. So this is my impression of Will Sasso impersonating Hulk Hogan. All right, brother. Well, we're gonna sign off on I Like to Read. Thank you so much, Kim Baldwin, for joining us. That just sounds like Kermit the Frog now.
No, it is perfect. It is so perfect.
Who knew I would be throwing out the rest? I would have practiced a little more if I knew I was going to be throwing it out.
Great. I can smell what you're cooking.
Well, thank you, Kim. Until next time.
Thank you. This was great.
Yeah. Stay reading, everybody. Check out Ladyland. We'll link your stuff below, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.